Well, I know too, like from my limited experience, casual, just trying to absorb stuff up as a young dude in the Air Force. A lot of different challenges with operating at night. A lot of different challenges operating at night over the water, dealing in and around boats and things of that nature. I Random sidebar, but like obviously where you're at doing rescues out over the water and dealing with ships, are there significant challenges when it comes to landing a helicopter like on a boat with I see these videos, right? Where the helicopter's coming aboard and then something's changing with I guess the dynamic, the cushioning or whatever it is, and then it goes away and then the helicopter ends up rolling over and it doesn't end well. What are some of those challenges?
So it's a qualification, and it's a memorandum of understanding between all the DoD components that fly helicopters to land on U.S. ships. And so the U.S. Navy's the lead on it, but there's qualification for single spot and then multi-spot landings on ships. And the single spot, where your rotor has, maybe 20 feet clearance from the superstructure on a small destroyer, is pretty spicy. And there's pitch and roll limits from the LSO on the ship that they'll pass, and you have to land within those limits for normal operations. And in some of those videos that are really dramatic, I can picture the British Lynx trying to land on a British ship, and it's way out of limits, pitch and roll, and they're finally able to land it, but it's really spicy. But that qualification sometimes is just maintained by a few instructor pilots and instructor special mission aviators or flight engineers. And then from that pyramid, you can qualify people if you have to go to war at sea or go do contingency ops at sea. But for the 33rd now, there's multiple reasons why we'd have to go land on a ship for integration or medevac or some sort of patient transload. So we do try to maintain that qualification, and it is, I don't know, if you've flown for a while, things kind of get normalized. When you go to the tanker and you haven't seen the drogue in a while, sometimes that'll get your hair up on your neck a little if it's bumpy. But when you get to a ship and you haven't landed on a ship before, it is it's a significant experience for the first time doing it. It's pretty wild. And recently we were able to land on a Coast Guard ship that was out here, U.S. Coast Guard,
Really?
blue open ocean. Yeah, it was kind of cool.
That's quite a ways away, but a lot of stuff happened out there in the Pacific.
Yes.
It's a busy theater these days. It's been a pivot towards the Pacific last few years. Talk to me a little bit about the H60G, the whiskey, and you mentioned upgrades going on at DM. Is it a conversion to the whiskey? What does it look like?
So the H60G fleet is our legacy fleet, and we flew those through basically all their lifespan in Afghanistan and Iraq during the war on terror, basically. They're good helicopters. They're workhorses. They were Lima model Army Blackhawks that we then kind of Frankenhawk modded to become the Pavehawk. Okay. And they've, in a lot of ways, reached the end of their life cycle. We were able to buy some replacement aircraft that were new aircraft, and they have like 2,000 hours on them now. So they're still pretty functional tails with longevity. So those have been kind of pushed to the top of the fleet and now are pushed to the Guard reserve units they're going to be the last to convert to the whiskey, but the entire force for Air Force rotary wing CSAR is converting to the H60 Whiskey, which is the newest version of the Black Hawk, produced by Lockheed Sikorsky. And DM is almost complete with their conversion to the whiskey now. And they're helping us convert a couple of our air crew. And then we're going to we get our first tails in January. So 2 whiskeys, and then we start converting. And by August of next year, we should be all whiskey squadron. So that'll be 8 whiskeys on the ramp.
Is it a big challenge, or is it a big process to convert over to the whiskey for the air crew?
It seems, so I haven't gone through it yet, but it seems fairly reasonable. It starts with a Type 1 conversion, which is done with Sikorsky instructors and simulator. And then it has tactical seasoning that's flown with Air Force instructor pilots that are previously qualified. And there was an initial cadre that was the folks that basically got at IOC and wrote the Vol 3 and got or still developing the tactics, if you will. but it has a lot more capability, and it's a new airframe. It's still a helicopter. It's still a Black Hawk, so it's not going to fly 4 miles a minute. It's still going to fly 2 miles a minute, but it's going to hover really well, and it's going to have a FMS that, when coupled, can provide pretty significant factors of safety over the water, and maybe probably all terrain to an extent. And it's just going to be better at everything that a helicopter is good at.
I'm guessing too, it's like, for me going from the F-16 to a big old fat plane, honestly, the challenge, even to this day, right, it's like the automation piece. It's so capable with the FMS, the automation, knowing what buttons to push and when to do it and get the jet to do what you want it to do. Like, that's honestly like the challenge, which is much different than like, I just want to go over there, so I'm going to turn and point and do that. Sounds like, yeah, probably the whiskey. Like, when you're talking about like the safety margins over the water, there's making sure that you put in all the right things so that it has the information is probably, so obviously crucial, but an incredible capability once you're using it.
Sure. So I think the data in is critical there, right? To fly you safely over the water. But in this way, like, I think CFIT and just fatigue, it'll mitigate that significantly. And I agree. I think figuring out how to get the right data into the aircraft is going to be critical. And then knowing nuances where if it can do a turning approach and fly it itself back to the spot, like, it's not going to know where the terrain is or necessarily where the winds are in the way the pilot does. So there will be nuances of, how to fly it yourself, but also let the FMS fly it to the extent that it makes a factor of safety for you. For instance, we've hand flown all our brownout or whiteout landings for 30 years in the G model. And the Army does that even without a FLIR or Qs in some cases with their Mike models, Black Hawks. But in this case, the FMS can just take you to a hover and then vertically land you. And it mitigates significant risk of being IMC at 50 feet and having to like zero out your velocity vector to the ground. So that's a huge factor of safety. And then for kind of our bread and butter out of Kadena is night water rescue, open ocean. So really no horizon, cloud cover, really limited ambient lighting from stars or moon because it's blocked by the clouds, and then no cultural lighting from shore or ship, just open ocean, nighttime, low illume. With the FMS on the Whiskey, I think it'll make what used to be the most complicated or the hardest skill set we did kind of a straightforward path from the beginning. And we've already pivoted culturally in our squadrons to qualify all our folks in night water, which is kind of the necessary skill set, at least at Kadena right now. And this will mitigate a lot of that as well. And it's got more powerful engines, better blades, full avionics suite that's just not 30 years old. It's new. It's great.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, when I was casual at Moody, this is 2007, 2008, and it's like, hey, the new rescue vehicle is going to be announced any day now. And it took 13 years or so for it to be announced. And then the number went from 112, 115. And then the Air Force said, hey, we're cutting that to 80 some odd aircraft. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. And it was 112. And then it was cut down to 75 with the Air Force purchase. But then Congress has added 10 to that to 85. And we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that's fun. I need to have Bones Cook on here, or Paul Sheets, one of those guys. They're my flight commanders back in the day.
That's awesome. From casual status.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just how fast time goes.
Sure.
And, where it is. So I remember you talk about the fatigue. I didn't know anything, right? But I can appreciate it now thinking back. I remember Paul. He was doing an upgrade ride for a new guy out of Albuquerque. So he's doing MQT, and we're going out doing, CSAR with some A-10s doing an upgrade for a Sandy mission. And I remember we orbited for like an hour and a half, like just doing it. And I remember watching him eat a sandwich up front while the other guy just like flew the helicopter the entire time. I was like, gosh, man, it's like be nice to put this thing on autopilot for a little bit. But yeah, it's funny. But again, I remember it's like any day now, we're going to get a new helicopter, new platform to go out there and do combat search and rescue, because just like the F-16, just like the F-15, all these things were fragged for 2,000 hours, 4,000 hours on the airframe, right. And then just service life extension after service life extension to keep bumping these things out, because we keep racking up so much time on them. So
yeah, they're hitting 12,000 hours on the Golfs.
That's crazy.
Just too many hours, right? What used to be, so the 308 beam, which is the structural longitudinal beam, starts cracking, and it used to be a one-time flight to depot to have it repaired, and now you just basically stopgap it with a mount or a brace, and then it just cracks further aft. A little while later, you just keep moving it aft.
It's fine. I mean, my statement of helicopters just shaking themselves apart, it still stands to this day. But fine. Yeah, it's gonna buff out. But the Eagle, jumping on that, is like the Eagles. I think, if you look at the ones at Kadena, right? They plucked those off the island rather quickly last year. Now we're doing a bunch of theater security packages out there, which I think you said the Eagles show back up. But all those jets were fragged for a couple thousand hours, and then one extension after another, and then a couple of them, snap in half, no big deal. I'd be curious, like the F-16. Have you seen like the wing flex? I mean,
no, I haven't seen it on F-16. I saw the video of the C model snap in half though.
Not where you want to be. I was just thinking, like, if you think about like carrying all the external fuels and bombs and stuff like that, just going out there and pulling like 5 Gs on it, like just the amount of strain it's putting on all these jets. But we're flying them hard.